Do you know how close Larry Bird came to starring for Bobby Knight and the Indiana Hoosiers instead of Indiana State? Most people don't know that Bird was actually initially enrolled at Indiana, but from his first day on campus, the hick from French Lick didn't feel like he fit in amongst the other students, most of whom had far more money than he did. When Bird broke his toe in a pickup game just 3 weeks into the school year, he decided to pack his bags and head home, never telling anyone, including Coach Knight. Perhaps most interesting, however, is that those 3 weeks on Indiana's campus would one day play a huge role in the Boston Celtics drafting the legendary player just 1 year before Magic Johnson would become the Lakers' first pick in the 1979 draft. So just how did Larry Bird end up at Indiana State? After dropping out of Indiana University just 3 weeks into his freshman year, Bird returned home and did a variety of jobs while dabbling in AAU leagues. 1 week after putting up 1,300 bales of hay, Bird showed up to play a game against a team of Indiana's best players from across the state. Though he was exhausted and arrived just moments before the game tipped off, he dropped 43 points and grabbed 25 boards, impressing Indiana State's head coach, who was in attendance and invited Bird for a visit. Bird, his brother, and another friend worked out at ISU in jeans and sneakers, and State's coach was so impressed that he offered Bird a scholarship on the spot. The rest, as they say, is history. Did you know that the 3 weeks that Larry Bird spent at Indiana University were one of the main reasons he was drafted by the Celtics? While Bird didn't finish his college career until 1979, he was deemed junior eligible in the 78 draft because he was enrolled at Indiana University for 3 weeks in 1975. That meant an NBA team could draft him and would have until the 1979 draft to agree to terms with him, or else he would re-enter the draft. Originally, Bird's hometown Pacers had the first pick in 78, but Bird told the Pacers he was intent on returning to school. Scared of forfeiting the pick, the Pacers traded it to Portland, who also had the number 7 pick in the draft. After taking Klay Thompson's father Michael with the top pick, the Blazers planned to take Bird 7th overall, only to watch helplessly as the Celtics drafted him 6th. Had Bird and the Celtics not agreed to terms over the next year, Bird and Magic Johnson would have been vying to be the top pick in the 1979 draft. And imagine this, if that had happened and the Lakers still took Magic, the Bulls would have been picking second with Larry Bird on the board. In 1979, Larry Bird almost pulled off a feat that had never been done and will almost assuredly never be done. In March of 1979, Bird played in the NCAA National Championship game. However, the Boston Celtics, who drafted Bird in the 1978 NBA draft, held the rights to the player upon the completion of his senior season. So immediately after Bird's Indiana State team lost to Magic's Michigan State team in the championship, the Celtics, who had 8 games left in their season, called Bird to see if he would join them. Had he accepted the offer, Bird would have been the first and only player ever to play in both an NCAA and an NBA game in the same month. Bird, of course, declined, opting instead to fulfill a promise he made to his mother to get his degree, which required him to stay on campus to complete some remaining student teaching obligations. Larry Bird's one of the best shooters of all time, but did you know he was an even better shooter when he was in college before his brother forever altered his shooting ability? In 1979, Larry Bird finished college and was set to meet with the Celtics to agree to terms with the team that had drafted him in the prior year's draft. That summer, Bird occasionally filled in on a friend's softball team, and when he showed up one night, he learned his brother was on the opposing team. His brother later hit a line drive toward Bird in left field, but as Bird reached down to snatch the ball, it bent his finger back almost completely. The injury was so grotesque that Bird's brother almost vomited when he saw it. After an initial visit to the hospital to have the finger immobilized, Bird received a call with bad news. His knuckle was shattered, he needed surgery to remove bone chips, and he would need several pins inserted into the finger. Then, the device that immobilized the finger after the surgery malfunctioned and ripped Bird's fingernail completely off. When the Celtics learned of the gruesome injury, they brought Bird, who they had not yet signed to a contract, in for an evaluation. The Celtics team doctor told Red Auerbach the knuckle would never recover and Bird would never get full mobility back in the finger. But after a quick workout in which Bird hit shot after shot after shot, Auerbach had seen enough to sign him. Over time, the finger became grossly disfigured, and Bird claims to this day that he could never shoot as well again. There are always NBA conspiracies floating around, but could this be where they all started? In In the 1984 Finals, the Celtics led the Lakers 3-2 when newly appointed NBA Commissioner David Stern stepped into an elevator before Game 6. He struck up a conversation with a group of men wearing Celtics gear. When Stern asked them where they were from, they told him they were friends of Larry Bird from Indiana. Stern replied, "Well, tell Larry to take it easy on us. We need this series to go 7 games." When Bird, whose Celtics lost Game 6, heard the news, he blew up and publicly mentioned Stern's comments. It was only when Bird and the Celtics won Game 7 that the controversy disappeared, and Stern breathed a huge sigh of relief. Larry Bird was notoriously competitive, but that competitive streak wasn't reserved only for his opponents. He competed with his teammates as well. In 1985, teammate Kevin McHale scored a team record 56 points, but asked to be taken out of the game in the final minutes. Bird told McHale he should have stayed in the game to try to score 60. 9 days later, Bird went out and scored 60 himself. When he saw McHale in the locker room, he said, "See, Kevin, I told you to go for 60 that day." Everyone knows that Larry Bird's from Indiana, but it's not well known that his mother's favorite player was not her son from Indiana State University, but rather an Indiana Hoosier, the one and only Isaiah Thomas. Even when Thomas famously criticized Bird after the Celtics eliminated the Pistons in the playoffs, Bird's mother stuck to her guns, telling her son that both players were out there working hard and things would be set. Bird also claims his mother loved Bill Laimbeer, even while her son despised the Pistons' big man. Bird hated Laimbeer so famously that he once told a reporter that notified him that Laimbeer hadn't made the All-Star game, "Good, now I won't have to worry about him getting on the bus and saying, 'Hi, Larry,' and me having to say, 'Fuck you, Bill.'" For the first part of their careers, Magic Johnson and Larry Bird were heated competitors that barely spoke. But all that changed one day in Indiana when the two greats reluctantly appeared in a shoe commercial together. The sneakers were from Converse. The campaign was called Choose Your Weapon, and the ad would not only change the sneaker game forever, but turn heated rivals into close friends. After the stars agreed to star in the commercial, Magic was forced to travel to Bird's hometown to make the ad. And when he arrived at Bird's home, he was greeted not by Bird, who wasn't even there, but by the Celtics legend's mother, who proceeded to stuff Magic with a home-cooked meal of fried chicken, mashed potatoes, green beans, and corn. When Bird finally arrived home, his mother was fawning over Magic, so Bird retreated to take a shower. After Bird's brothers took Magic four-wheeling around the property, Bird and Magic finally went down into the basement to talk alone to one another. They spoke in depth about their backgrounds and learned they had a great deal in common, coming from poor families in the Midwest, having paper routes as kids, and dreaming of basketball greatness. When the two men emerged from the basement looking like the best of friends, everyone else in the home was shocked to say the least. Larry Bird's outstanding Hall of Fame career would have been even more impressive if not for a decision he made in the summer of 1985. While home in Indiana that summer, Bird had a basketball court installed. The problem was that he decided to shovel gravel around the court to provide drainage on his own, not because he was cheap, but because he took pride in doing his own work. The next morning, Bird was unable to get out of bed, and in the years to come, he would be diagnosed with a congenital back condition that would derail the final 6 years of his career and limit his ability to achieve his full potential. Larry Bird wasn't just legendary for his on-court play. He was also known as one of the toughest players in NBA history. Bird was plagued throughout his career with elbow issues, had a mangled finger that he couldn't straighten, had bone spurs in both heels, and of course had a chronic genetic back condition that plagued the final 6 years of his career. But there are some other ghastly tales of injuries he suffered along the way. In 1982, Bird was elbowed in the side of the cheek while chasing down a rebound. His skull was depressed by the blow, yet Bird finished the game. After the game, doctors drilled a hole in the side of his head, inserted a tool, and dropped his zygotic arch back into place. In another game, he played a second half with a fractured eye orbital. When he blew his nose after the game, his eye popped out of the socket in grotesque fashion. In 1985, Bird had an excruciating pain in his toe for nearly 3 weeks, only to learn he had a serious infection between two toes. When the team doctor told Bird he was going to administer Novocaine and cut his foot open, Bird passed on the medicine and opted for a couple of beers. They cut a 2.5-inch gash into the foot to drain the infection, and after they wrapped it up, Bird played a full game. You probably know Larry Bird had a congenital back issue that derailed his career. But did you know just how bad his back got? Late in his career, Bird required an hour of painful therapy on his back every single day, or else he wouldn't even be able to loosen his back up enough to practice or play in games. In time, Bird would have to spend much of his downtime in a fiberglass body brace that reached from his chest all the way to his hips. When he was told he no longer needed it, he pulled an office space and took it into his backyard where he blasted it with his shotgun. The Dream Team provided Magic Johnson and Larry Bird the opportunity they'd always dreamed of, to play with one another instead of against one another. Despite being on the back end of their careers, the two stars still managed to create great memories together. In an exhibition game against Cuba in Portland before the Olympics, Magic and Larry combined for a basket that Magic says he will remember for the rest of his life. Just before the half, Magic drove to the hoop with Bird trailing on the wing when he fed a no-look pass to Bird, who drained a three as the buzzer sounded. "I have no idea how he saw me," said Bird. Unfortunately, in the post-game interview, Bird shifted in his seat and felt an agonizing pain down his leg that was so intense he became nauseous. A short time later, Bird's brother entered his hotel room to celebrate and found his brother, who proclaimed, "I'm done. It's over for me." It was the last time Bird would play in the exhibition tournament, and it was that point at which Bird knew it was about time for him to hang up his high tops. After Larry Bird returned from playing for the Dream Team in Barcelona, he told the Celtics he was retiring. Dave Gavitt of the Celtics front office was well aware that Bird could no longer physically play, but he wanted Bird to stall before announcing his retirement because in just 2 weeks, Bird was due to be paid $10 million for the next 2 seasons, a payment the Celtics would be obligated to make. But Larry refused, claiming, "I don't want the money. I didn't earn it, and I won't take it." One of the highlights of Larry Bird's retirement ceremony was when Magic Johnson appeared. While the Lakers had shipped his Lakers warm-ups to the event, Magic realized he'd forgotten to bring a t-shirt to wear. The Celtics gave him a Celtics jersey to wear instead, and of course Magic buttoned his warm-ups on over it to conceal the jersey of the hated Celtics. But during the ceremony, Bird, who was aware of the circumstances, ripped open Magic's warm-up jacket to reveal the jersey and sent the fans in attendance into a ruckus of laughter and applause. In 1997, Larry Bird's first season as coach of the Pacers, Indiana faced the Bulls in the Eastern Conference Finals. Midway through the fourth quarter of Game 7, Indy led by 3 when a jump ball was held between Michael Jordan and 7'4" Rick Smits. As the players surrounded the two jumping the ball, jockeying for position, Bird saw something he didn't like, an advantage for Scottie Pippen and the Bulls. As he prepared to call a timeout, Bird turned to his assistants to ensure he had one remaining. But in that moment, the ball was tossed into the air. Just as Bird predicted, Pippen took possession of the tip, and the Bulls tied the game with a Steve Kerr three-pointer. The Pacers went on to lose the game, and Bird will never forgive himself for the mistake. Kevin Garnett was traded to the Boston Celtics in the summer of 2007, but did you know he was almost traded to the Indiana Pacers instead? 1 week before the Timberwolves made the trade, Larry Bird asked his old teammate Kevin McHale, who was the GM of the Timberwolves at the time, if he would be interested in trading Garnett. But McHale said no. When the trade happened a week later, Bird called McHale to find out what had happened. Bird said McHale didn't give him a straightforward answer, and that's when he realized it wasn't McHale who had made the call to trade KG, and he assumed the decision must have been made above McHale's head. Michael Jordan recently sold his share of the Hornets for a whopping sum. But did you know another NBA great almost got a share of the Hornets first? After he retired from coaching, Larry Bird and a businessman by the name of Steve Belkin formed a group that made a bid to buy the Charlotte expansion team in 2002. But the expansion committee instead chose a group headed by Robert Johnson, the founder of BET. Interestingly, rapper Nelly was a minority owner of the franchise as well. 4 years later, Jordan would become a minority owner of the franchise, as well as its head of basketball operations. And then in 2020, Johnson would sell the franchise to MJ, making him the first former NBA player to own a franchise. In 2023, MJ sold his share of the Hornets for approximately $3 billion, and you just know Larry Bird was kicking himself.